Hey everybody, how's it going? Good to see you. I've been listening to this podcast called The Middle Kath. Kathy is the host, and it is just full of insight and just great information, and it's just so well laid out. I love it. I highly recommend it. I was lucky enough to be invited onto the podcast, and Kathy and I did an episode together. Today, I'm going to play a clip from that episode. Kathy was kind enough to share the video with me so that I could give you guys a taste of that conversation. The clip I'm going to play is about 10 minutes long. The entire conversation that's available on her podcast is about an hour and a half. So if you're interested in what you hear here, I highly recommend you go over and check out that episode and check out her whole show. It's great. I feel like if you go check it out, you'll be a fan. She does great work. So to give you some context for the clip, Kathy had asked me about what it was like to lose connection with myself and how I got into drug addiction. Where the clip picks up, however, is when she asks me the follow-up question, which is, what did it look like to reconnect with myself as I came out of my drug addiction? I'll leave links in the description to the full episode and to her podcast, and I hope you enjoy.
Yeah. So pretty good sense of how you lost connection to yourself. And so as far as reconnecting, like, when did that start? And also, I understand, like, in this process, there's like a reconnecting, and sometimes there's a relapsing, and then like a reconnecting. And you've mentioned a little about that already on your channel, but like, tell me about first really learning to reconnect to yourself.
This is interesting because when I think about this, I generally think about how when I got arrested and I finally stopped withdrawing from drugs in jail, that was when I first started. But
Yeah.
actually, the reconnecting started before that, and this is interesting because so I was doing a bunch of drugs. I had gotten addicted to a bunch of drugs, and I was still married, and I was doing travel nursing assignments. And then at some point, my friends and my wife basically had an intervention on me and dragged me to rehab.
Right.
So I went to rehab, and then I got out. It was a 3-month inpatient rehab. I got out. I was clean for 3 more months, so 6 months total, and then I relapsed again. And then at that point is when it was kind of like that. This had happened so many times where I was just lying, and she was discovering that I was on drugs and lying about it, and then saying I got better, and then she discovered. It was just over and over and over again. And there had been a lot of other traumatic things that had happened to her recently in her with the family and everything. And it was just kind of like, okay, divorce time. I'm not going to do this anymore, which it was totally the right move and completely understandable. And so at that point, the relationship ended, and I stopped nursing. At the time, I had been working at the inpatient rehab that I went to. I actually got hired as their nurse afterwards, and I stopped doing that job. And I just got this camper van and started just running around and doing whatever I wanted. But I was like out of this relationship for the first time. And I think the reconnecting actually started in some weird way there. Even though I was worse, I was that's when I really went crazy. Like, I was already bad on the heroin and the meth, but I just went completely crazy. Like, it was my full-time gig now. All I did was run around and do this, started selling to support my habit.
Mm-hmm.
But I was totally on drugs. But I remember feeling this really novel sense of relief because my whole life I had been living sort of this facade where I was like trying to present myself as this very successful RN, ICU RN, cool career, and also to my wife, like I was okay and stuff, but hiding this totally other side of me, which was this crazy, intravenous drug addict. And so I was living this double life, and it was really stressful and really disconnecting. Like, that's completely disconnected from myself at that point. And then when I went off on my own, and the thing is, everybody knew what I was doing at this point. There was no hiding it. Everybody in my life knew. And there was some sense of reconnecting with myself even at that point, where I was like, I actually feel more able to just relax into myself now than I ever have before in my life, even though I was still completely destroying myself on drugs. Like, that was emergency problem. It was like life threatening. I was ODing and all this stuff. And so, but inside, I just remember feeling this immense relief that I just wasn't hiding anything anymore. Like I didn't care what anybody knew. So it stopped being like about what other people think. And I started to be more like concerned about what I felt and what I wanted. And I actually had a really good time in that period, but obviously it was a horrible situation because there was this life-threatening addiction that I was deeply, deeply involved in. Then I got arrested. Then I got put in jail. Then I had to quit cold turkey. And I withdrew in jail, county jail, for weeks and weeks. And then as the withdrawal kind of went away and I started to feel like the drugs had gotten out of my system, that's when some real connection, the actual like deep, authentic connection started to happen, reconnecting with myself. And I feel like during that process, over the months and then ultimately over these last 3 years being incarcerated, that connection has only grown stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger, because that was another step to that experience of not living for anybody else anymore, like not living for concern about what anyone else thinks anymore. When I was in prison, it was like doubly so. It's just like, I'm in prison now. Like everybody knows, like there's no hiding this. My reputation is over, I don't care. Like, so at that point it was like either I had this choice where it was like, I can either like wither away into self-hatred and pity, or I can just not be concerned, or I could just completely become concerned with, like, how am I doing and what does this life mean to me?
Wow.
And I was lucky. I didn't have any kids that I needed to take care of. I had a golden retriever that was the hardest thing to lose. That's the only being that I was responsible for when I got arrested, and she got adopted out to a friend, and that was horrible. But other than that, I didn't have anybody else supporting or anything. So it was kind of this ideal situation where I could just, look inward and really start to figure out, what do you want, Brian? Like, what, it doesn't matter what anybody else wants. It, like, what do you want? And what does meaning look like to you? What does happiness look like? What does wellness look like to you? I started feeling well for the first time in my entire life. I started actually feeling like well, and it wasn't like an overnight thing. It was kind of a process, and it's still a process that's ongoing. Um, but it's become my primary concern, where I've gotten to where I focus on, I start with my day-to-day living, and if I'm doing well today, and if I'm doing things, what in my day am I doing that is making me more whole and well, and what is hindering that? And yeah, for the first time in my life, I think I'd never focused on that before. I'd never done anything on. I'd never had any routine before. I'd never had any real goals before. I had never had any self-care processes like going on, any kind of consistency. And so it was like finally getting in touch with that and doing the work to actually take care of myself, just
Yes.
completely changed how I approach my whole life now.
Well, it's making me think of your the video that you got with the most views. Because in it you talk about trying to explain the like the hard to explain part about like why continue using, like why did this continue, when you didn't want it to but couldn't stop.
Mm.
And the sense of like, well, it's just right now. I just need to take care of this right now. It's just right now. Nobody will know. It's just right now. And so there's this present time orientation with like fixing the pain and getting that external answer, like putting whatever it is in the body to fix the thing. And then we were just talking about the transformation into the inner work and self-care, and like what's it going to take for me to do well today is so much more like filling up from the inside versus like solving from the outside.
Yes.
Even though they're both like that kind of present time solution, like it's about being in the present, but rather than like escaping the present, it's like going internal and like kind of just, whatever. I don't know what it is, like accepting the present. I don't know.
It's like the
Yeah.
opposite end of this spectrum is like like I love how you said that, solving for
Yeah.
without, like solving out here without here, or solving from in here. And
Well,
that's,
right.
yeah.
Wait, and you also said when you started to get better, that was in prison, right?
Yes.
Which is so remarkable. And you were also because like what a challenging environment to try to connect to yourself. And
Yeah.
also I think it's significant that instead of kind of going more the victim route, like, man, it's so unfair that I'm in here. I hate this. Like, it's like, okay, this is terrible, but I am free of expectations. Here I am. Like, I can't get out. This is where I'm at right now. Like, everybody has to accept that I'm in prison now. And there's some obviously wildly different, but I feel like I connect to this a little bit because as a former golden child, when I got the bipolar diagnosis 5 years ago, it was like, oh, it's really over. Like, the golden child routine is like over now
Mm.
because I got so depressed I couldn't achieve, like I couldn't play the part. I just could not play the part. And there was something strangely freeing, ultimately, not in the moment, but at some point I was like, it was freeing to realize like, oh, that whole role's made up. I'm not a golden child, actually. I don't have to achieve to be loved. Like, I don't have to, I can like just be instead of do. Like, all right, So anyway, like, wild. So I feel like I don't know, I'm hearing you talk about reconnecting to yourself in these really challenging circumstances in prison. And like, the question I have is like, how do other people do that? Like, how do you do it? How do you do it?
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Sorry, I didn't know.
yeah, go ahead. How do you do it?
Oh, all right. That's all I've got for you here. Again, if you want to check out the whole conversation, it's over on the Middle Kath Podcast. Link is in the description. We had a great conversation. We covered a lot of different topics. And go check it out. Also, check out the rest of the content on the Middle Kath Podcast. Kathy is great. She talks about her own healing journey. She talks about healing from childhood trauma, obsessive thinking, codependency, all kinds of different topics. I personally found a ton of value in her content. I think I've listened to every single episode that she's made. So please go check it out. I haven't done this in a few episodes, but I'm going to give you a song of the week this week because I have one that I've been listening to over and over again and trying to learn how to play it and sing it, but it doesn't work for my voice because the guy's voice is so unique and so cool and so has such a thick accent that I don't have, that it's kind of a weird one to cover. The song is Easy Easy by King Cruel. It's not going to be for everybody, but that's just the song I've been listening to this week. I think it's awesome. I can't get enough of it. All right, I'll see you guys soon. I know it was a couple weeks since the last time I posted. I'm going to post something sooner than that this time. I'm getting off the ankle monitor in less than a week, hopefully. So, you're going to be joining me for that. I'll see you soon.